The monthly dragon is back. Chris Ward, what do you do? How are you?
What do I do? How
What
do
do
I?
you
How
do?
am I? Oh, so many questions
Dragon
just with
stuff.
one little sentence. I'm absolutely fine, thank you. Anna, lovely to be back for our March edition of the monthly dragon. We're going to do something a little bit different today. I hope it doesn't come across as self-indulgent, but also I was at one of my schools the other day in Westminster, and they said to me, "Can we see one of your dragon games?"
Oh, what an honor!
And I thought, wow, okay, right. And I was quite impressed that I was able to remember one of my dragon games from the past, and I was reflecting on my life. Don't worry, it's not coming to an end just yet.
Yeah, light at the end of the tunnel.
I thought I was so lucky to have so many exciting dragon games in the past, and it made me think that although we do this theoretical thing, we talk about the latest developments and what have you, and I do both the chess publishing and here, where that is my main aim, to keep viewers up to date with the latest theoretical ideas. I also still maintain that it's still just as important to be aware of the various combinations, tactics, sequences. So if you get used to them, you'll recognize positions, patterns, and think, wow, and go for it. I think that's so important, because inevitably, even if you're playing a different theoretical variation, at some point you're going to be out of your theory, your opponent's going to be out of your theory, it's you against them, and things could occur.
And you are the second person who's almost exactly word by word saying what Grandmaster Dorian Rogozenko has said very recently, because we very recently launched our opening encyclopedia. And of course, there's tons and tons of grandmasters who are focusing on one certain opening, giving ideas, plans, tactics, and it will just take 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes, and you get these ideas. And those ideas, like sacrificing the rook on the c3 or other things, the more often you keep them in mind, the more you get better in the opening.
Important.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward.
I remember even, of course, when not more advertising, but of course, when I did my Dragon DVDs, I have a whole section on themes and ideas and what have you, didn't I? Of course,
absolutely, yes.
And I'm probably going to have covered a couple, covered sort of within those, the ones that I'm looking at now. But yes, this morning, I noticed something pretty amazing, actually, that's why I'm going to relay it to you. Okay. So I'm going to show you a game, two games, actually. The first game this isn't the one I showed, but suddenly it crossed my mind, because most of the dragon combinations, if you've or sequences, involve the good old dragon bishop. This guy here, who cuts across the board like a laser beam. Okay?
Beautiful.
Now, this first game, actually, that I'm going to show you took place, oh my word, in 1987, could you believe? When I was young and...
You were like 2 years old.
Yeah, maybe I was 2. Yeah, I was a genius back then, I tell you. I couldn't walk. But
the first word you said was dragon.
Dragon, yeah. My mum wasn't too impressed with that. She said, "Don't you dare call me that again." Right. So okay, so here we go. So, So, first of all, this particular variation, G4, is, as you know, one of the main lines.
Yeah, I had that recently.
Last month, you wanted to talk about bishop c4 because you were very worried about that. We know that castle's queen side is perhaps the main one for white, because there's fewer options that black can do, whereas the bishop c4, as you know, and I discussed last time around, there's the Chinese, there's the Soltis, there's the Topolov, blah, blah, blah. But also the move g4 is reasonable for white to play, because black's options are also relatively limited. And the idea is this is basically an offensive-looking move with h4, h5 planned, but also the fact that white can play g5 means there's more control over the black break d5. But still, I have always maintained that g4 is the least of concern to black of all of the variations. Just a quick reminder of why it's to play h4. We would not hesitate to strike out in the middle of the board with a move like d5.
Boom.
So G4, in this game here in 1987, I played the move bishop E6. Very reasonable. Now, back then, it's still the main move here, but back then, it was basically decided that knight takes E6 here will be a mistake by white on the grounds that, well, essentially, this pawn is now very weak, targeted on the F file, and this pawn on E6 controls D5. However, over time, now in more recent times, white takes this most of the time, this bishop on E6, as it's kind of decided, yeah, that's true, but you've got a bit flimsier cover around the king, and this also is a target. So there's a bit of give and take there. There's one couple of weaknesses, a couple of pros, a couple of cons, fair enough. So these days, probably they would take. Back then, castles was a more likely move. And essentially, I was very happy with these positions. For example, now taking and queen swinging out to A5, of course, attacking this pawn. And it really is attacking that pawn. It wouldn't be a poisoned pawn because if B3, queen A3 would be checkmate. That wouldn't be very poisoned at all. In fact, completely the opposite of poisoned. Tasty. Probably, I would suggest. Now, so knight takes d4, bishop takes d4 on queen a5. And as you know, if then white played king b1, this brings these various tactics that we've discovered into play with knight takes e7. But black will get the option to go rook fc8, making this no longer a valid tactic. So this sort of position would occur quite a lot. When there are ideas with rook takes c3, so h4, rook takes c3, for example, or so white would tend to play a3 here to stop any of that sort of thing from happening. That is very comfortable main line for black. But I also, back in these days, 1987, I was obviously attracted to a different idea, which is instead of taking on d4, playing the move knight e5.
Yeah.
So the idea, essentially, we are, of course, attacking this pawn on f3, but it's protected by the knight. But one simple plan is to effectively put the bishop here, swap off bishops so that you can actually end up with the knight on c4.
Okay.
I mean, probably if I had this again, I might go knight e5, but I'd certainly, as I just told you, I'd swap off knights, be very, very happy with that situation. But back then I played knight e5, this game. And white played h4, just carrying on with a good old attack as you do. And I swung my queen out to a5, of course, attacking a2. And white defended that with the king. Now, this is really, really funny because this morning I looked at the online database, okay? And the first time this position occurred, according to the online database, was in this particular game. This particular game was the first time, but it has actually occurred 10 times in total on the database. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and black has played, I mean, involving a couple of relatively high-rated players, by the way. And black has played two different moves. One very plausible-looking move, and one move that just seems to win the game out of hand, basically, already.
Okay.
Now, the move which is played, including in a game involving a 24-30 player, is the move rook fc8, which, of course, activates a rook on a half-open file. You can't argue with that sort of move. Now, what's quite amusing about this position, of course, as you might not have escaped your attention, is all these minor pieces along the same diagonal.
The laser is blocked.
The laser is currently blocked now, but in a couple of moves, he's considerably unblocked.
Free to shoot.
That's right, free tissues. Because my move here, you feel free, everybody, to stop here, pause. And then when you're ready, play. And in this position, I played the move knight takes f3, sacrificing one knight. The knight took. And then knight takes e4.
Sacrificing the second knight.
Wow. So it would appear that I was the first person to do this. But people that have gone on... So my game occurred, this is what I noticed, in 1987. Let's assume this combination is going to come good. And then it was played in 1995. And then a few times in the 2000s. Yeah. But lots of people have just not followed suit. They've not followed me. They've done something completely different. I mean, that's harsh.
It's like
isn't it?
Monty Python.
So what's completely clear, of course, if the knight takes on e4, then this is a very simple checkmate. Well, I can take this guy or go here. That's nice, spoiled for choice, of course. Again, involving this wicked pair of bishops.
You can even checkmate with the bishops. That's cute.
You know, who cares about knights in open positions? It's the bishops that you want. So actually in this particular game, White thought, well, I can't do that. So they had to move their queen. I took off the knight check. They took back and I played bishop takes c3.
My gosh.
And my opponent pondered it for a while and decided the best course of action was to resign here. Because, I mean, you can't really go wrong with result. Well, you can't do better, of course. So queen takes a2 check. How do they deal with that threat? I guess probably the only queen up, other than giving the queen up for the bishop, of course, here. But then I would have kind of a nice little selection of either queen a1, queen b, queen a1, queen b1, queen a3, or queen a3, king b1, queen a1, up or down, whichever one I wanted to do. Very nice combination. Now, my point originally was to bring to explain that most of the combinations do, of course, involve the dragon bishop. But actually, my most memorable game involves completely, and I mean completely, the opposite, and all will become clear in a second.
The dragon knight?
I don't want to spoil it. Don't even guess. It's not a dragon knight. What would be what would be completely the opposite of having a dragon bishop on g7? I want you to think about it, and then I'm going to make it clear in a second.
Now it gets interesting.
You're you're intrigued. I can see that. But obviously, I've brought this into play merely by saying the concept of knight takes f3, a little tactical combination, could easily come up in your games, particularly sacking on f3 or sacking on g4. So f takes e3, g4 happens, and then knight takes e4, just to loosen up that position to get at the white king.
Very, very important indeed, yeah.
Are we happy about that situation? I think we are. So we're going to move on to the main game.
Okay.
Like I say, I was quite shocked that not many people had followed in my footsteps. Well, that seemed that's let me down a little bit.
Well, look, following your footsteps is grandmaster level in all cases because you are a genius dancer after all. So difficult.
Thank you very much.
Difficult.
But it could also have been that I wasn't a grandmaster back in 1987. So who cares about that? Okay, here we go. So this is the game. And the game I'm about to show you took place and won the best game prize in the 1998 British Chess Championships.
Congratulations.
So here we go.
A bit late, maybe.
Again, we're familiar with the opening. Here we go. Good old dragon. And here my opponent did do the 9 castles variation. They played 9 castles. Absolutely fair. So everyone that follows this site knows I would suggest that d5 is probably the best move, and we looked at that so many times. But over the years, I've tended to alternate between two different systems, having played a third as well. So it's very possible to play bishop d7 and just hang around the edges for a while. But the other line, which I always used to enjoy, particularly as a junior, was this one here, swapping off the knights and bringing the bishop to e6. This is actually a very logical system. It's like saying, well, you had the chance to occupy that bishop, that diagonal with your bishop. But because you didn't, I'm going to take it. Thank you very much. And that diagonal, of course, is pointing towards the white king. By far and away the best move here. Well, it's pretty clear that next up I will be going queen a5, given half the chance. But it's pretty clear that king b1 is the best move for white here. No doubt about that. Why is that? Because that intercepts the queen a5 plan because of our knight d5 little idea with the knight takes e7 check intermezzo. We all remember that little idea, everybody? Queen a5, no, knight d5, and the queens are directly opposed. And if we swap off here, that'll be a pesky little check. Now, it's very true, after king h, it's very true to say that the knight might have problems. But at the very least here, if it was attacked, black-white could go bishop takes knight and then hop the knight back, would have an opposite color bishop endgame where white would be a pawn up. Not much of fun for black at all.
Yeah, it's a good pawn.
Yeah, it's a good pawn. So here we go. So instead, black tends to play queen c7. And the idea is simply to bring this rook to c8 and then move the queen to a5 next time around when we've sidestepped that little tactic. So the downside is it takes like an extra move. So if you like, white has gained the move king b1 free of charge, which in contrast to the lines where we talked about g4 earlier on move 9, that's when the queen gets to come over to a5 in one turn. So here we go. And here my opponent shocked me with a move I'd never seen before. And then given I was 1998, I was a grandmaster at this stage now. I was now actually a grandmaster. So it was surprising, obviously, having done loads of dragon stuff up until that day, having played it right from when I was a junior. It was unusual to be shocked like that. But this move did come as a bit of a surprise. I later learned that it had been played a little bit leading up to this tournament. Bishop b5, it looks like a shot in the dark. You could say, well, what is that move here? What's going on here? But then it became clear that what white was actually planning to do is offer a little bit of cover by withdrawing the bishop back to b3, which offers that cover, offers that shield to the white king.
Your opponent was just very scared.
Very scared, although I'm pretty sure he would like to be getting this. And I reiterate, probably those that follow the chess publishing will know that h4 and h5 is still, in my opinion, the most critical line for white to play. None of this mamby-pamby, getting the bishop out to be, oh, I'm scared, let's kind of offer some defense to the king. No, you've got to go for it, okay? Now, what happened? Bishop b5. Well, I pondered this for a while, and I thought, well, I guess they want me to go a6 and b5. So I thought, yeah, go on then, I will. So I played exactly these moves at a6 and b5 to push that bishop back to presumably where it was aiming to go. And I thought, I'm going to play the move b4. Right. Attacking the knight. The knight pretty much forcing the knight to come into d5, which is where it probably wants to go to all along, comes into d5. And we get a little bit of an imbalance with me taking with the bishop. I used to quite like these imbalances of material where white would get the two bishops, but the bishop will be kind of obstructed by the pawn. When we have these situations, typically the idea is, yes, it maybe binds down on this square, but it certainly prevents black from going e5, and maybe there's some chances to get some pressure against the e7 pawn. However, the bishop is often a target here. So as me to play, the first thought people will be saying, surely I want to go a5, a4 to try and attack that bishop. But if I go a5 in this position here, let's just have a look at it. White will put that bishop on a4, and now that's very difficult to dislodge this bishop. Now, notice I can't take this pawn on d5 because simply bishop takes g7. These are attacked. Actually, if I tried to do a little
I'm looking at c3, but the bishop takes back, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So knight, so I just don't think it will work. So, for example, knight here check. I think even at I don't think that's...
I mean, the bishop can just take back.
Yeah, and then we have to not lose track of the fact that white is already up by a bishop at this precise time. So this move is not going to work. So it doesn't look very exciting in the moment, but it is going to shortly. So I prepared that with rook fb8.
Aha.
So a couple of the ideas was maybe I was thinking this rook might come to b5, but mainly I still have in mind the idea to go a5. My opponent played bishop a4 anyway, and I had an incredibly long think in this position.
How long? Incredibly long. Okay.
Do you really want to know? It's incredibly long. I mean, right. I can tell you that I don't know if this influenced the decision to give this the best game prize, but I ended up having to make about the last about 20 moves in about 3 minutes. This is before we had like increments. It was back in the old days, no increments.
No, probably the old chess clock. Yes.
Yeah, the old
Could
chess
be.
clock as well. That's correct. So I did. Yeah, I definitely had. I think I had like a 50-minute think. I think it was around about here actually.
Unbelievable. Was
Planned
this the
quite
longest
a
time
lot.
you've ever thought?
Yeah, I think I've definitely it's about. I can think of one other time I had a long thing, but this was a really, really long thing, and you're going to see why, because I had to calculate quite a lot of stuff.
Okay.
And a lot of the game now went as kind of planned, basically. So I played now the move knight takes.
Now
D4.
it might work.
Right. So I played the knight takes d5, and bishop takes g7. And now, hang on, it's still not going to quite work, because if I go knight c3 check here, bishop takes c3, b takes c3. I am, of course, this is, of course, pinned here. But I think after queen d5, rook takes check, I'm not really going anywhere from there, and I am a bishop down. So, however, I have played knight takes d5. My opponent played bishop g7, and this was the cool, calm move that I continued with. Knight b6. Simply attacking that bishop on a4.
That is freaking genius.
And of course, well, it's not yet. I'm hoping you're going to like this game, okay? Because, like I say, I could remember it all, and I'm hoping you're going to like it.
But
Knight b6.
The beauty about it is that everything, all the calculation is moving towards like c3, but instead you go b6 and go like, I have other plans.
You are not wrong. You're not wrong. So, okay, let's now talk about White's possibilities. So he can't really save his light square bishop because I'm going to take his dark square bishop. So the question is, if you were White here, how would you go about? And I had to calculate two different variations. Essentially, I was considering lines where White goes queen h6 here, and considering lines where he was going bishop h6. One idea of the bishop h6 might be to try to give mate on g7 with a queen d4. The queen h6 might be to deliver mate with a rook swinger up here and along there, which is kind of worrying a little bit. Yeah. So I would need to act quite quickly in the event of either of those. Yeah. So in the game, my opponent chose to play the move queen to h6. But let me show you a couple of fun lines which I considered. Okay. So I had to consider queen h6, bishop h6, knight takes bishop, and then queen d4. Now, to make it clear, I did not want to do f6 here because of queen d5 and queen f7 and the likes of that. Felt a little bit ugly. But I did come up with the following combination. This is what I'm spending some of my 50 minutes on. e5, attacking the queen. I'm a pawn up, of course, at the moment, but I leave this pawn on prise. And now knight c3 check. And you think, well, I don't really get it. Why is that working? Here. Now, the first one you'll notice, if the king goes to c1 here, then I have the very neat rook b1 check. And of course, I can sidestep to b7.
Old school checkmate.
The old school checkmate. And if the king goes, okay, you can pause everybody again. What do I do about king a1? Well, of course.
I know it.
Go for it.
Rook b1 check.
Anyway, it was a bit of a giveaway that I gave the same move last time. But of course, the only difference is the overloading of the situation with the white rook on d1, needing to take on b1, but protect the queen at the same time.
Beauty. So,
there we go. So, that was one variation that I had to look at, which was the bishop, bishop h6, knight takes bishop, or in fact, queen d4, knight takes bishop, bishop h6. Either way, we reach the same.
I see.
Yeah. So my opponent said, no, I'm not doing, thanks very much. I'm not doing that. He played queen h6 instead. I took, and now it's going to take a bit longer to go h4, h5. That takes longer, but this move prepares very swift move, rook h4 to deliver checkmate. However, as you have pointed out, everything has been gearing towards this particular move here. And when I returned to that question, I literally said, what is the inverse of having a dragon bishop on G7? It's having a white bishop on G7 instead of a black one.
Perfect. And for a long time, actually, yes.
And incredibly enough, I can't actually use that bishop in my attack.
Yeah, it's weird. Right. This white bishop always wanted to become a dragon bishop, and his dream came true for a bit.
His dream came true. So, so knight c3 check. So here's the point. That this time round, the knight can't really be taken. If he takes now, check. If king a1, then simply queen b6. And, well, the only way then to prevent the checkmate would be to drop the queen back to c1. But then at the very least, I could just take this here. And I'm back up. I'm up on pawns now and on all sorts of things. So that's absolutely fine. And if he plays king c1, queen b6 again threatens checkmate on b1. So the white king would have to do a runner. Check down here. Again, if he goes queen c1, of course, I can swap, I can leave, do whatever, and take the bishop on g7. King here. And I may be able to... my plan was next to check and get the rook on the 7th rank.
Yeah.
And the simple idea is to go e5 and checkmate over here. Might be able to take the rook on h1 as well. So after returning back here, knight c3 check, it's simply not possible for white to take that knight on c3. So instead, the king went to a1. Fair enough. Still, white has the threat of rook to h4. So what did I do? Have to keep moving. You have to keep moving on in life. This is important. Queen a5, now threatening checkmate on a2. Fine. What did he do about that?
Only with the pawn move, right? There's nothing. I can see nothing else.
Well, I can see there's two choices.
Oh, there's.
He can move the pawn to a3.
Yeah.
Yep. Or now he can take this because if I recapture, it's no longer check, of course.
Yeah, but yeah. You're right. There is.
Well, let's have a look. So a3. This is the alternative line. B takes. So now you've got to see that I've definitely got one or two threats.
Yeah.
There's got to go b3. Of course, what I really loved about this game, by the way, and you had to be around in those times to appreciate, is that
there were hundreds of people around your board.
Yeah, there were people around. No. But I mean, even afterwards, when you go over it, if you go over the game with an engine, we're talking Fritz 2, 3, 4, whatever. The combination that the sequence at the end that I come up with, the computer didn't even see it. Doesn't even see it. These days, you put it in, drop of a hat, it's there straight away, has it all calculated from the end. So even if I put this position on the engine now, for example, it loves black, it simply says I can go now. Well, I can do one of two things, actually. It says I can even just bail out if I want with queen h5, because that guarantees swapping the queens off and then I'm 2 pawns up. Or I can even go rook b5, threatening exactly the same thing. So anyway, that's kind of irrelevant. The point is that he took on c3, and this was still part of my calculations. And the idea is stage 2. So now we're moving on to stage 2 of the plan. What am I going to do here? How am I going to deliver checkmate here? It does seem that my rook's the rook on a8 isn't yet pulling its weight, I have to say. Well, simple chess. b3 now.
What? I was almost certain you would take, but it probably doesn't work. The queen goes back, right?
If I take, I'm not even threatening anything yet. I'd have to take. So actually, let's give it a go.
You're right.
If you go here and he gets to carry on with his plan.
Yeah. It's
not like I have time to do this sort of thing.
No, you don't.
Because it's checkmate coming my way.
Okay.
And I might not have escaped your attention, but I'm also quite a lot of material down at this particular stage. I do seem to be generously donating it to my opponent.
Yeah, I thought about queen a3 after taking, but it's also too slow. It's too slow.
How do you mean after take?
Yeah, it doesn't work. It's too slow.
Yeah, still mate. Yeah. So, no, but this is all the part and parcel. B3.
Threatening.
Now I'm threatening mate on A2. What can he do about that?
Take back, probably.
Yeah, I mean, he can't do a runner with this king. I take on A2 and then C2 checkmate. So he's got to take this back. Check.
Mm-hmm.
Got to go king B1. Pretty clear my next move stands out like a beacon here.
You take the pawn, right?
Got to go in for that. Check. Pawn takes. Queen takes, check. Right, the white king has a choice of two moves. The first way that he could go is fairly straightforward. If he goes king A1, then I can simply bring the other rook into play. Check. 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 I'd have to block with the queen and then rook here. And the point is that I'm going to win the queen from my rook, and then I'm going to win the bishop, which is going to leave me with 3 pawns alongside my queen.
Should be enough.
Definitely will be enough for those connected pawns. So, obviously, he cannot go king A1. He needs to go king to C1. Fine. Rook C8 check, of course. King to D2. Rook to C2 check, of course. King E1. And this is the bit that I am most proud of. I've got like lawnmower, what do you call it? Ladder checkmates, lawnmower checkmates, except white has got a few obstacles hindering my obvious checkmating plan.
True.
But the idea, this is the idea. At this stage, whichever version of Fritz it was at the time has me dead lost.
Yeah? Okay, I have an idea though,
yes.
But yeah. For you at home, of course, you can make a guess too. So this rook is the crux of the position, the rook on d4. So if we can deflect the rook, maybe it can work out. What about the check on e6 with the queen?
You are an absolute genius, but I'm not going to let you there.
Damn it.
I need more than that. I need more.
The rook goes back to e4.
Yeah.
Now our queen goes back to b3 and the rook goes back again. Damn it. Wait.
You mean I've done all this just
for exactly.
repetition?
So we don't go to b3 with our queen, of course. We go to a2 with our queen. Does that work? Or do we just go to d5 with our queen? That doesn't work either. So what happens if we go to a2 with our queen?
Oh, no. Do you know what? I have witnessed your progress throughout my 2-year span with you. And you have, honestly, you have continued to improve. And you have got it absolutely spot on. I play queen to e6 check. Rook to e4, absolutely forced, of course. Otherwise, I'm going queen to e2 check and queen checkmate on the 7th rank. Rook here. And then this cute move here now. So everyone's going, I don't get it. What's the point of this? Well, obviously the idea is now
another threat.
I'm threatening queen b1 with a nice little lawnmower checkmate. Now, well, people could say, well, why can't he just go rook d4, for example? No. Then, of course, I have the neat little shuffling progress. If king d1, queen c2, so I'll continue to shuffle all the way along there until I can do a checkmate like that, which is quite neat. So, well, what other choices are there? Well, he now played king f1. Why does that help? Because, well, now the rook is able to block on e1.
My goodness.
So I'm literally dodging these pieces. And, of course, as we highlighted all along, his dragon bishop is controlling that long diagonal.
Very funny.
So we're nearly there. So what do I do now? How do I win this now?
So I have an idea again.
Love it. I'm loving these ideas, Anna.
Well, wait until you hear them. So what about we kind of do this?
Just to add, I do love the ideas more when they're terrible ideas.
Our queen gives a check on b1. The rook has to go back. It's the only move.
Good.
Our queen gives a check on b5. Now the king has to move to g1. We give another check on b6.
Yeah. And your hope was king f1, queen f2 mate. Before you notice he could block on e3 with his queen.
No.
Rook on e1. And that pretty much consolidates his defenses around his king at that stage.
I thought I had it. Oh, damn.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Keep going. You're doing well.
That's the question. So, okay, obviously, if we give a check on f2, the king goes to e1 because d2 is covered. That's the whole joke.
Yeah, that's the whole joke.
But what if we keep on taking on g2, threatening to give a check on... It doesn't really work. And f2, king goes to d1, queen goes to c2, king goes back.
Sliding around at a 7th f2 and the c2.
That doesn't work either.
Keep going. I think you're doing well. You're getting there. You're getting warmer. I think you're getting warmer, definitely.
Okay. So, so for now, I only see the check on f2.
Okay, so I did give this check on f2.
Yes, the king goes to e1.
Yeah, if he goes to g2, you know I'm taking that and checkmate in 2 moves. So he has to go here, yeah.
And now there must be something really sweet. We cannot go back. Well, if we take on g2, it probably almost also seems... I mean, what can white do after...
Anna, you are absolutely right.
Okay.
Taking here now.
Okay.
Have you noticed my threat? My threat is not queen f2, king d1, queen c2, king e1, queen f2 with a repetition.
It's the b1.
It's the b1 one
threat.
because he's still no longer controlling the correct squares. He can't do rook to d4 to block on d1 because I've got the mate on e2. So and he can't go king f1 this time round because I go back to f2 checkmate with my queen.
So queen c1.
So queen c1 was played in the game.
Out of a sudden, the f3 pawn, which I didn't even notice, is probably something to look at. So we give a check on f2 with the queen, and then we can give a check on f3 with the queen.
And this was the end of the game. Queen takes f3 check because, of course, I can win that rook.
Mate, yeah.
We check and then give mate on e2.
This is a really beautiful game. And as you mentioned, like that you're proud of yourself, I know exactly, because I've heard enough grandmasters talk about it, that they're calculating a variation, like lots of moves. How many moves on top were that? At least 12, right? Or
yes.
And they stop, and then they stop because they go like, it's over. It is so difficult to spot queen e6 when you're calculating in front.
Yeah, I mean, that was
absolutely crazy.
Like I say, so essentially when we were getting down to around the stages where I was bashing out those moves, the b3 move and the rook takes b3, I was literally down to my last 3 minutes on the clock around that stage, but I thought I worked it all out about that.
Goodness.
so that was that's why the crowd were ranking. Good God, he's a GM and he's down by a rook and a piece and all the rest of it. But fortunately, you got so lucky there, Chris, or something like that. But I had actually planned some of it out. There's a way it works out.
Yeah.
But the point is that the whole knight takes d4 and bishop e6 line doesn't have a good reputation anymore. And then even within that, bishop b5 might not be best. So that whole idea might be lost. We might never see games exactly the way.
Sure.
But there will still be those same themes, essentially. They'll come up in different positions.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So there we go. Yeah. So I'm sorry, everyone, if you were looking for what I wanted more Hungarian dragons. Can't you bring me some more of those?
Just wait till next month. Come on.
Sure, we'll get those next month. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hope that we offered some entertainment. But please remember, just check out nice dragon combinations. And if you, dare I say, you're actually interested from the white side of you, there's some good checkmating combinations for white as well. As a dragon player, you need to know how white can attack you as well as how you can attack your opponent.
Thank you, Chris.